Welcome to Your Brand Amplified, the podcast where we interview marketers, publicists, and brands to learn their stories, what makes them tick, and tips and tricks that make a difference. I'm thrilled today to have Kyle Roof on the show, who is going to demystify AI, maybe a little bit, and talk about all things SEO, including some things I saw about patents and Google writing rules because of some things that you did to figure out how to get around the algorithm. So I'm so intrigued and so excited for this conversation. Thank you, Kyle.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So first, how did you get into SEO? What was the thing? Because you got your BA in psychology, you went to law school. So then what was the path to this crazy world of marketing and digital?
Well, actually, then I practiced law for about 4 years in Virginia. I was a trial attorney.
Wow.
I did in court every day. I did divorce, custody, and support, and some criminal defense. And I hated it with a passion. And so I decided to take a year off. My wife was also a trial attorney, and she was also burnt out. And so we did the most logical thing. We quit our jobs, and we got jobs teaching English to South Koreans.
Oh.
Kindergartners. It's a pretty A to B career move.
Yeah.
While there, we started a company, and that company needed a very complex website. And I ended up going through a lot of developers to create that website. And then I got the bright idea of general contracting websites.
Oh.
And so that's what we started doing. I brought my brother into the company. A few twists and turns later with him, one twist with him getting thrown in jail in India.
Oh my
gosh. That was fun. I had the bright idea of opening a company in India. And I was like, we should just open our development company there. And we were told we were going to get a shakedown from the police. And my brother was at the company and knocked on the door. And it's the police. They has to see his papers, and they say, these are the wrong papers. But instead of asking for the bribe, they throw him in jail. And he's talking to the chief of police. And the chief of police goes, look, these could be the right papers. I don't know. You have two choices. You can, one, leave town tomorrow, or two, you can sit in jail and wait for the magistrate to come, and the magistrate will sort it out. He goes, when does the magistrate come? The chief of police is like, I don't know. So I was like, I think we'll get out of town.
Jeez.
We get him out of India. We're hemorrhaging clients because we don't have employees anymore. And my brother goes, he codes. He's like, so I can take these 4 clients, and I don't code. And we had just started doing SEO. Basically, for me to pay the rent next month, I needed to learn SEO that day and become the person that was going to run those SEO contracts. And that's basically what I did. And then I met my business partner, and now we have an agency and a software and a platform where I teach SEO. It's been a pretty wild ride, actually, from start to finish.
Amazing. And so to that point, you have a few different businesses now that you run. So you
That's
have
right.
High Voltage SEO, which is your agency, correct? Okay.
That's right.
Page Optimizer Pro, which is an SEO tool.
That's right. That's a SaaS tool.
Fantastic. And then the Internet Marketing Gold Group?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. We call it IMG Courses. We're trying to rebrand, actually. We have 40 instructors in there, myself included. So we kind of go at different angles for digital marketing and SEO. And then we also run tests on Google's algorithm. And so we post tests there every 3 or 4 months. We'll have another testing review showing kind of what we've tested and what we learned about the algorithm recently.
Yeah, I'm really curious to know about that because I've never heard of anyone doing that. I've had people come on and talk about SEO or why they're moving to video only SEO, but I've never had anyone kind of demystify that aspect and kind of what goes on behind it.
Well, when I was learning SEO, like immediately, I do the search, like, is this a ranking factor or should I do this? And you get like 3 yeses, 3 nos, and 3 maybes. And I was like, well, that's not going to work. That's not any way to learn this. And then I was like, people must be running their own test sites. And so that's what I started doing. I started running some test sites to try things out, like try out techniques, things you hear, should you do this, should you not? And then through kind of doing that, I developed a way to test to see if something is or is not a ranking factor in Google.
Oh.
And this is 2015. And in 2015, I spoke at my first conference. And it was a real high-level conference, only about 40 people, I think, 40, 50 people in the room. And it was kind of interactive. Like people were asking questions of the speakers as they were going. And so I went to talk about the method that I had developed for testing. And what I assumed was that this would be a dialogue. This is what I'm doing. What are you guys doing? And 5 minutes in the talk, I realized nobody's doing this at all. God. This isn't anything that anybody's on. And that's actually something that I was able to develop as a differentiating factor in the SEO that I did, and also for the agency, was that, we don't test on your site. We actually test over here and run tests on the algorithm. And then when we figure out something that works, that's what we bring to your site. We're not experimenting with your company,
Right.
and that was a real differentiating factor for us, especially early on when we were trying to get our legs under us and establish ourselves as an agency. And that gave us a lot of credibility. But because nobody was actually doing how I was doing it, I was actually able to get a U.S. patent on the technique. And so I now have a U.S. patent
Amazing.
on determining if something is or is not a ranking factor.
Yeah, because that's when I have had SEO people on, or when people talk about it, it's usually try this keyword out and try this thing out on this one page and then have something else on the other page. But it's like you said, it's all really running experiments on your own website that could really hurt your website for that 1 month that you're running those certain tests versus the next month.
Yeah, I try to avoid running tests on something that you care about.
Yeah.
Just on the outside chance that you do something horribly wrong, or you do something that Google doesn't like very much, you don't want to, ruin the rest of the site, especially if you care about it, if it's your baby or it's your brand. And also the techniques I developed too, because a lot of our clients are like banks or insurance companies, and like you can't be like, hey, good news, guys, we burned down the website and we need to get to a brand new domain. That's not gonna fly. So you can't get anywhere near anything that might get the other sites in trouble. So if you want to try something, you should try it out somewhere else first.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of, you said banks are one of your bigger clients. What other categories of clients? Like, do you work with small businesses, or do you recommend that they go into using your tools or into your courses or other things?
The only thing with a small business might be that, our packages are going to start $2,000 to $3,000 a month, and SEO should not be your only marketing channel. So depending on your marketing budget might determine whether or not you want to go with the agency. But we are set up so that, kind of depending on where you are with it, SEO, we probably have a product for you at your needs and at your price point. So that's where, if you want to learn how to do it yourself, or where the courses come in, that's where IMG comes in. Or if, you want to do it and you want to apply it, that's where maybe the software comes in. Mm-hmm. If you want somebody to do the work, then that's where the agency would come in. I wish I could say this was some master plan as I was putting these companies together on, like some Machiavellian, we can do integrated vertical marketing between the brands, but it just kind of ended up happening that way. Well, what I ended up doing is we ended up peeling off successful parts of the company and then creating separate companies for it. So like the SaaS tool, for example, that was an algorithm that I wrote, and we were doing it initially by hand in the agency.
Wow.
And just couldn't keep up with demand on that. So then we turned it into a script, and then into a Python script. And then I was showing it to some SEO friends. I was like, would you like this? Is this interesting? And they're like, absolutely. And then so that birthed that company. And then same with the courses. I was teaching our employees how to do SEO, and realized like, I can do these videos and do my own course. And then we were able to build off of that and create a platform where a community and of courses and stuff like that. But that all kind of then it all peeled off of the agency to turn into those other companies, but it then turned into very integrated companies and a synergy between them where, if somebody comes to you, we probably have something that we can provide to them.
Yeah.
It's worked out pretty well.
Yeah, definitely. And you started with one point, and then when you got success with it, you were able to move into those other areas or spin off the other parts of the business. And I interviewed a finance person earlier, and she would say that you set it up very successfully, and that's exactly what you should do, even if it wasn't your intention when you started the company.
Yeah, but definitely when we started the company in 2013, 2014, I did not see, that 10 years down the road that we've have this ecosystem built out of these different companies. I could not have anticipated or the success of all of it is really still amazing to me. I still really don't know how I make money. Like it's just like all of a sudden it just kind of happens, and it's so bizarre, but so far so good.
Works. Yeah. Well, let's talk about, you were in South Korea teaching, and then you started these companies, and now you and your wife lived in Thailand.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm in Chiang Mai, which is all the way up in the north.
Yeah. And you were saying that there's a really vibrant digital community there.
There is. That was a big reason to move to Thailand. We after South Korea, we moved back to the United States, and we had our little guy, and we've been threatening for a while because within the agency, we have offices in Phoenix, Berlin, Melbourne, and now Jamaica in Kingston.
Oh, wow.
But we'd kind of been threatening an overseas move for a while. And then in 2019, I did a speaking circuit, and I set it up in places that we were considering moving to. So I spoke in Bali, we were in Hanoi, Chiang Mai, and then Munich and Milan. Mm-hmm. And while there, we tried to meet people that were living there, with the net-headed families, and kind of see like, what do neighborhoods look like? What do houses look like? What's the school situation? It's one thing to kind of do the research. It's quite another to be on the ground and looking at those things.
Yeah,
to
definitely
actually put eyeballs on them, right? And it's kind of funny. We were at a local bar that foreigners go to, and just out of the mist appeared this couple, and they were about our age, and they had kids, and they talked about, that real people live in Chiang Mai. And then I've never seen them ever again. I'm pretty sure that I conjured them. I manifested them.
Oh my gosh.
As great people for my wife to listen to, and she got really comfortable with the idea of Chiang Mai. It ticked all the boxes, and then we made the plan move. And then actually it was kind of funny. COVID happens, and we had actually already given up the lease on our house in Phoenix. And then we were homeless for a few months because they weren't giving out any visas during COVID. But fortunately, we had my son enrolled in an international school, and the first people they let back into the country were children. So that they could continue education.
Nice.
So we were actually able to get in during COVID in 2020, really on my son's visa. He was the one here legally, and probably could have kicked us out if he wanted.
I mean, that's pretty amazing. I shared with you before we got on, my mom and my stepdad live in Thailand. I'm half Thai and Laos. And I actually just got my Thai birth certificate so that I can have
that's great.
citizenship. Yeah. So that's a whole thing. But that's definitely a place that I'm looking at for my future. Just I know the quality of life is really great there. But to hear that there are also these great professional communities that you wouldn't necessarily know about or think about is fantastic.
Yeah, in Chiang Mai, it's actually really hard to throw a rock without hitting a high-level digital marketer.
Wow.
It's pretty interesting. And that was a big reason to move for me, was to be in this community, because it's a community that has an abundance mentality. The idea of, if you are successful, we're all successful. And so you have people that are even in competitive niches. Like, they're going out to standing, but they will still help each other. And it's a community that if you invest in the community will give right back. And to invest in your personal growth, your business growth, any kind of development that you're looking to do, there's a real possibility that Chiang Mai and the community here can help you achieve that.
Well, I think that's really important. You have to be surrounded by people who will help you rise up,
for sure,
and also are going to be supportive. So it's fantastic that you found that. I'd love to hear a little bit about how you chose the other places that you have offices in now.
So when we started the agency, it was really myself, my business partner, Andy, and he is from Australia. At the time, he was going back and forth between Berlin and Australia, and Melbourne, Australia. And I think at the time I was in San Francisco. So when we started the company, we instantly had 3 locations, and it was a lot sexier than it looked a lot sexier than it was.
Big, yeah.
Yeah, because we were like, we were instantly an international company, and it was me, Andy, and then our first employee, Maria. She was in Rome. So we did technically have everybody on each continent. That's how it started. But then from there, as the company grew, then we got actual people that were in those areas and actual offices. But the start was, we looked a lot better than I think we were than we actually were with the multiple locations.
Nice. And one more question about entrepreneurship. What was the hardest thing going from working in law to teaching? So getting paychecks from other people to then starting your own business and having to figure out how to get clients and how to make this something that would be tenable for you, your business partners, your family, to be able to pick up and move and have that support.
Yeah, that also wasn't the easiest. The one thing that is nice about the agency model is that if you don't really have any costs until you have a client, which is an interesting way to start and run a company that, you don't have the expense of doing anything until you actually have something to do. It is also interesting, how do you get those clients initially? And some of the things that we did kind of out of the gate were we partnered with, say, a web design company that needed SEO services done, and kind of started as a white label. So essentially they are finding the client, and it's on their marketing that's doing that. And then we're coming in and offering a service through them. Was a way to start. I can tell you that that's not, for us in the end, that wasn't a great business model moving forward. And we never really figured out how to set up a white label product, but kind of getting out of the gate, having that so that essentially they did the marketing, they got the clients, and then we can come in and provide services, and probably at a discount, but it really got us going, got us case studies, got us involved, and also kind of seeing what clients were looking for, what users, what people wanted or needed, and what they desired in terms of SEO packages. And so that was really helpful at the beginning. Cool. The other thing I did too is just kind of hitting the street and finding organizations, local business organizations. And I was like, hey, I can teach you something about SEO, at your next meeting, 15, 20 minutes kind of a thing. And you teach them, and you honestly teach something real dumb. Don't pitch it at all. What happens is they realize that they want that, but they don't really want to do it.
Right.
And you can get a couple clients that way, probably per meeting, which is a great way to go about it. And you can do that online as well. We did a few online kind of webinars, and I would say those had mixed results. But the ones where I was actually able to physically get in front of a group did pretty well, at least pulling in maybe one client per kind of presentation, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really great ROI. So, yeah.
I guess the other thing is, I guess it's terrifying. A lot of people don't want to do public speaking.
Wow.
And I get that. I get that a lot. But if you just kind of keep it calm and conversational and more like, let's have a sit down and take out your laptops and let me show you something real quick about your websites, then it's more of a, not necessarily a full on stage presentation, but a little bit more comfortable situation on explaining what you're doing or what they need or something like that.
One, it's building trust between you and them and their company. And so then they're going, okay, he's really providing a resource. He's not just...
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So we know that there have been some big changes, but I'd love to hear, what have you seen as some of the biggest changes in SEO since you started?
Well, the one thing I would mention is that in the decade that I've been doing SEO is that every 6 months, SEO has died. Like there's always something that has killed SEO and this is the end and you don't need it anymore, or this is going to radically change everything. And surprisingly, SEO hasn't died, and it's gone on and not only survived but flourished and gotten larger and I think more and more important. This year, there's the big thing with AI.
Yeah.
And the language generative tools. And again, I think in February, everyone said SEO is dead, and we're filming in September and somehow it hasn't died yet. It's still going strong. And so while certain things do tweak some things, or maybe kind of tweak your approach a little bit, or maybe tweak a technique or how you might go at achieving your goals, in the end, SEO is still, as long as there's an algorithm, there will be optimization of that algorithm and SEO will continue.
Yeah. Are you ready to take your brand to new heights? Join the Brand Amplifier for Entrepreneurs program. Learn how to build, elevate, and amplify your brand with a comprehensive 10-module course. Learn more about it and other ways to implement our strategies at fullcapacitymarketing.com. Click on EFCM Learning Hub for more information. Can't wait to help you amplify your brand. How do you use AI appropriately with SEO and content? Because I teach grad school and AI is a very big topic of conversation. I have students who have lost their jobs as journalists because of AI, but as a tool on the PR and communication side, we see it as a resource, not something to write for you, but to use to fine-tune some of your writing. So when it comes to SEO, what are some of the best ways and practical tips people can use AI to improve their SEO and searchability?
Well, one thing I'd mention is what the output is. And that is that it's a tool that is guessing at the correct words around the topic that you are asking it.
Okay.
And essentially what that means is that it's really just a content spinner. If you've ever played with article spinners from back in the day, that's essentially what it's doing. It's just spinning an article. It's doing it very well. And it's doing, that's the amazing part of it, is that the output is very readable, whereas before they weren't. But the problem with that is that there's really nothing AI about this. It's not creating anything new. It's also not searching. It's not going and finding the answer and coming back with information for you. And that's important because the output that it gives is very non-specific usually. And then it has often factual issues where it'll give you incorrect information and it'll confidently give you incorrect information. Famously, a couple months ago, some lawyers used it to write a brief and it gave them 4 cases for their point, and none of those cases were real.
Yeah.
And now those attorneys need to explain why they shouldn't be disbarred. So like some real dangers in just taking it out of the gate. But then from an SEO perspective, if you're just spinning content, that's essentially duplicate content. And Google doesn't like duplicate content because it adds nothing new to the conversation. And so if you were just to take AI generated content and throw it on your site, you are exposing yourself to some risk where Google might determine that you are using AI content and not adding anything new. So it's not necessarily that it's AI driven and that's what you're using. It's that you didn't add anything new to the conversation. If it's not unique to the conversation, then Google will start to devalue that content and in turn devalue your site. So the best way, I think, as you mentioned, on how to use AI for what you were talking about is the same, I think, with SEO. And it's a great way to come up with content ideas. It's a great way to come up with content outlines. That sort of way to kind of maybe jumpstart and give you a rough draft. But once you have that content, you do need to edit for tone, for brand, for factualness, and then for uniqueness. And the more you do that, then the less risk you take on but also I think that's the way to use those tools appropriately within SEO.
Oh, that is fantastic. And I will say I'm not as well versed in the whole AI discussion as I should be in all of the prompts and things. So it's definitely something I need to get better at. Are there tools in part of your SEO tools and your classes that teach people the AI side of it and how to best utilize that as an SEO tool?
Yeah, we have a couple on using AI prompts for SEO. Well, the other thing about using it is that it can help you do things faster, for sure. But if you're bad at SEO, it's going to help you do bad SEO faster.
Oh, no.
It's not going to drag you into like good SEO. It doesn't know how to do SEO.
Got it.
You still need to prompt it on the output that you need. And if you don't know what you're doing in SEO, then it's not going to help you.
Yeah.
So I would make sure that I'm doing something in a way that is producing an output that will help my SEO. And you have to feel confident that you're doing that. Mm-hmm. Not just like, all right, ChatGPT, do my SEO for me. It's not going to do a very good job, and it'll likely run you into some problems.
Wow. Now let's talk about Google writing a rule specifically around what you were doing.
That was pretty funny.
Yeah.
A few years ago, there was a competition to rank a term, rhinoplasty Plano. Rhinoplasty is a nose job, and Plano is just outside Dallas, Texas.
Yeah. Okay.
The rules were you have to have a brand new domain, so something you hadn't done anything to. And then the competition was only 30 days. So it was a real sprint. And then I felt, I'm pretty good at SEO and I've got a pretty strong team and me. So we entered and we ended up taking 5th officially. But nobody lighting the world on fire because in 30 days, I think the guy that won was on page 8 or page 9. We were somewhere on page 9. But then 2 weeks after the competition ended, without doing anything else to the site, we went to page 1 in Google. And then about 2 weeks later, we went to number 1 in Google. And then we were number 1 in the maps and organic. And then we actually wiped out the maps and we were the knowledge panel. So we were rhinoplasty Plano.
Oh my God.
People really started to lose their minds at this. And the reason they lost their minds is because we did the entire site in lorem ipsum. Lorem ipsum is the fake Latin text, they use like when you're building out a website. But we took that and then we did the math on how many times we needed the target keyword, how many times we needed its variations, how many times we needed its contextual terms. And then quite crassly copied and pasted those words into the lorem ipsum in very specific places on the webpage.
Oh my gosh.
To get our counts where we needed to do it. And some people, it was kind of funny, somebody wrote an article about it and they said that we did that to make fun of Google. And that's not true at all. I did it to make fun of people who say you need to write good content for Google. Mm-hmm. Because it's not about that. No, you do need to write good content to convert. If somebody comes to your website, you want them to do something like, give you money or give you an email or you need good copy for that.
Right.
But when it comes to ranking, that's a different animal because Google is an algorithm. So if you give the algorithm the math that it wants, it can be very, very successful. So after the competition, that actually article was written about 3 months after the competition. And about 6 hours after the article came out, Google took the site down, which is, I guess that's fair. That's fair play. But that night from about 1:15 a.m. to like 1:27 a.m., Google took down 20 of my test sites. Cool. And those sites had nothing to do with the competition site. They weren't linked together. They weren't on the same hosting. They weren't on anything. They were completely separate. So it was a very punitive move. And at first I was kind of bummed out about it, but then I realized that Google just completely validated everything I was saying. If I was talking nonsense or if I had gotten lucky, they would have rolled their eyes and moved on. But I actually was kind of showing a way that you can learn how the algorithm works. And I don't think they appreciated that very much. A couple of years later, I was doing a course on white hat SEO. I'm actually a white hat SEO, believe it or not. And I was doing a course on white hat SEO. I was just refamiliarizing myself with the guidelines. And there was this rule on the no-no list that said, you can't have a page that doesn't make any sense to the reader, but contains keywords. I was like, well, when did that rule go into a place? Because I do not remember that rule. So I took the URL and I threw it into Wayback Machine, which is a tool that you can look at a website on how it was, months or years ago.
Oh, wow.
And before the competition, that rule didn't exist. And then 1 week after my site went live and people saw what I was doing, that rule appears. And then about 3 months later, they punished me for that rule. So I think it's possible that I'm the only person on the planet that has both an SEO patent and an SEO rule written by Google for them. And that rule, you can look it up in their guidelines right now.
Oh my gosh. I would not dispute that. I'm sure that is true. But so speaking of, you talked about how after a month, nobody's really lighting the world on fire. In the competition, you took 5th, made it to page 9. The person who took 1st made it to page 8 or 9. And I think that's another thing that people don't always understand about SEO. It can take a lot of time to develop. And I always use my podcast as my case study because I couldn't get the .com forever for Your Brand Amplified. Somebody in, I think, Australia had it for their brand business, and I could get the .co and the .whatever else. But eventually my podcast, or my name associated with Your Brand Amplified as a guest on other people's podcasts, took over almost all of Google page 1, a lot of Google page 2. And that person eventually I got a notification that the .com was available. So of course I took it because it's valuable real estate. And so I didn't do I wasn't intentionally like, I'm going to get my podcast to be number 1 and take this away from this guy. It just happened organically. But I was like, wow, if I'd actually put money into this and like worked on my SEO, it could have probably happened even faster. But it is a process. And sometimes you see these companies out there that promise big results within 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. How often does that happen? And can you demystify that aspect a little bit for us?
One of the biggest factors is just time. So having that domain that had some age to it before you purchased it was actually probably very helpful in getting things going. Plus all the time you put into other things, like all of that has a cumulative effect. But there's a certain level where Google will trust you for a term. Most people have experienced this, where you write, say, what they call like a long tail keyword. So that's a low search volume, kind of usually a longer phrase type keyword. And you're just like instantly on page 2. And you just feel like an SEO god. You've created fire. And then you do like a very similar looking term and you can't crack the top 100.
Interesting.
And then you feel like an absolute idiot. What's the difference between those two terms? And the likely difference is the one was in your tier, where Google just trusted you for it. Your site had the requisite authority for that term and it's just going to give it to you. Whereas the other term was not. And then so in order for you to win that term, you're going to need boosts to kind of push you up into a tier where you don't necessarily belong. Right. And those boosts would be, say, off-page SEO with like backlinks, doing more SEO type things. So one of the things that you want to do, which is cumulative over time, is kind of raise your natural tier. And the best way to do that is to regularly post content that is in your tier where you're kind of winning that term without really doing SEO and then gaining clicks and impressions. And then as you gain more clicks and impressions, you move up into, say, the next tier, and then you can post content into that tier. The more you do of that, the more update proof you become. Because when Google comes in and does an update, what they're doing is they're taking away boosts. And maybe they decide they don't like those backlinks anymore. And so I don't really think of updates when people get hit. I really don't think of them getting slapped or penalized by Google. I think Google's just moving them back down where they belong, into whichever the tier it is. And so if they have a site that's completely built on boosts, they're going to get hit the hardest.
Okay.
And so something that anybody listening, like, what should I be doing? I would regularly post going after lower competition, usually lower volume terms, but do regular posting in that so that you can win those terms. Those pages start to get winning keywords and clicks and impressions with doing very minimal SEO. It's really just more of a research game of finding things that you can write about that you can win quickly with minimal SEO. And the more of that you can do, the stronger your site gets as a whole, and also the less susceptible you are to any changes in Google's algorithm. Anytime there's a change, you won't be affected because you're not doing anything that can be affected, essentially.
That is really interesting, because I think I've heard people talk about backlinks and don't do backlinks, you get penalized for them, or yes, backlinks. And so the process that you just walked us through, I think is really helpful to figure out what's best. And my next question is, if somebody can't afford to be in the agency right now, but they use your SEO tool, will that help make recommendations for them on, here are some long tail keywords or some different things that you should put into your post that will then help you with your ranking?
Right. So that's what the tool does, is it tells you from an on-page perspective, like what terms you need to get on the page, how many times, and in which places. Wow. Essentially, that's what I used in the competition to how I got to rank it. How would I know how many times to use particular terms? That's actually what the tool does. I would say, though, that you want to run the tool on what might be considered like a money page or a target page, like usually a harder competition type term, like a term that you know that you want to win and your competitors also know. And I would do it on that type of page because it is a time consuming process. The other thing that I talked about, writing content, you want to do like minimal SEO. And what I mean by that is putting the term, say, in your title tag, which is the title that search engines see, your H1 tag, which is the title that humans see, maybe one time within the body and also within the URL. And if you do that, that should be enough SEO to win that term or be competitive. And I would post that regularly, just like say within my blog. And then I would start linking from those to my target pages. I would choose one post to one target page. And I usually do them in groups of, say, 3 or 5. So, okay, these 5 posts are all going to link to this target page, and these 3 to 5 are going to all link to that target page. And so while you're doing the SEO that works, or like, so building backlinks, for example, or doing on-page SEO, you're doing that for part of your site on your target pages, but then you're doing this other thing kind of as a foundational layer where you're continually posting to raise your natural tier that also support those target pages. And so I would do the things that work, or you're like, this is SEO and this is working for me. I would continue to do that. At the same time, I would then also post this other content to kind of raise your own authority.
Well, and okay, let me ask you about IMG now. So what's involved in this? I know it's a global community. You're testing, you're running tests. You're also training people on how to do effective SEO. Is it a monthly membership? Is it a one-time fee? What does that look like for somebody who might be interested in that?
It's a monthly membership. It's $97 a month. So, at $97 a month, you get access to all the courses. Yeah. And so it's perfectly fine. We were actually selling my on-page course, for example, it's a couple $1,000s. But we realized why don't we bring people into a subscription model, and then they can use as much as they need. So they might not need to spend $2,000 on one course. They might only need a couple modules, and they can get that done in a month, and that's great. So come in for the month, get the information you need, and you can go. But it is a community, so you can ask questions about SEO, and people who are pretty decent level will help answer, and some of the instructors will help answer, and some of the community members are really top level, where people can ask questions and learn about SEO. We do little events where we have AMAs where you can ask experts, what they think about certain things. We do little called the lounge or something like that, where there will be experts there just kind of hanging out and talking SEO, and you can ask questions and stuff like that. And then as you mentioned, we do run tests on the algorithm. And so the tests that I run and some other people run, we post those, and we do a test review every 3 to 4 months, kind of running through what we've learned recently and what we're looking at and what we're experimenting with and stuff like that.
Very cool. I am really excited about everything that you're doing. What do you see as your next step in your SEO journey?
I'm hoping to sell all my companies and retire at some point.
Nice.
Yeah, I can see myself. Hopefully, I think in the next 3 to 5, we've had exits, and that's kind of the general game plan. And we're working towards getting all the brands to the point where they could all exit. And that's the big push for the next couple of years for sure.
Yeah. Fantastic. And what does it look like to go from building your brand, starting your entrepreneurship journey, to getting it ready to exit? What are some of the steps that are different? Is it more like making sure your finances are shored up, that you have all of the tools and resources, in easy to use manuals for whoever, takes over?
That's a big part of it. You have to have super tight SOPs for sure. We're basically a well-trained Cocker Spaniel can probably run your company and do a pretty decent job. It occurred to me, and this is on a sale that I have had, an exit that I have, that you have to be able to remove yourself from the company. Mm-hmm. So if you're on the sales side of things, you can't be the one selling. Somebody comes in to buy something, you can't be the one handling that. You have to have a sales team. If there's services that you're providing, you can't be the one actually doing the services. Your team has to do that. What I realized is you shouldn't be able to leave your company for about 6 months, and not only will it maintain, it'll actually grow, because you've got processes in place where the team can function, and you've got the right people in place to handle that. You've got key players and do those things. And that doesn't happen overnight. That takes years to build. But that's necessary if you want to have an exit. And regardless of what your company is or what your brand is, you have to get to that point, and then that's when you can actually have an exit. So, because what I realized, if you're doing all the work, you are the one that is doing the sales, you're the one providing all the services, you're the one packaging it all in and mailing it out. You don't really have a company. You don't really have a business. You have a well-paying hobby. And there's nothing wrong with that. There are some hobbies that pay very well and people can do it very successfully. But if you want to get to the point where you have something that can be sold, an entity that somebody would buy, it has to be a business. And a business is something where you can remove yourself entirely and it'll live without you, because the entity isn't as intertwined with you for its success. And so that's the point you have to get to. It's the more that you can pull out and the more that you can get away from it and not run it, that's the more sellable asset that you have.
Yeah. And that's a very hard place for a lot of people to get to or think about. So it's definitely something for everyone to consider who may be listening, who's thinking about starting a company that they do want to exit one day.
I was going to say, everybody thinks that they're the best at what they do. That's the biggest problem. And they think that nobody else can do what they do. And that's actually the point of the SOPs, because they should get to the point that you got that employee and they're just focused on that one thing. They're going to end up doing it better than you can.
Yeah.
Because that's the one thing that they're focused on. And that's really I think the mindset that most people need to get rid of is like I'm the only one that can handle this. And that's really a failing on your SOPs or your ability to teach what you do. You should be able to pass that on to somebody else. And so if you can start just even with the smallest task, getting rid of those and giving them to somebody else is I think probably the right first step if people want to get to an exit.
Well, I could ask you so many more questions, but I'm going to leave it here so that there's a little bit of mystery for people to check out all of the great resources, which I will be putting in the show notes for us. pageoptimizer.pro is the main website. I believe I'll have a special link to share with the audience as well. And I'll put that on my website and newsletter and all of that fun stuff. So I want to ask one more question, Kyle. Do you have a favorite quote or a mantra or some words of wisdom that you want to leave us with?
Yeah. I've got a few that I like, but one that I think is appropriate is always that there's no reason this can't be fun. There really isn't. Even if you've got the dreariest task or you're a slog, it's always nice to take a step back and realize, we can have fun with this. This can be something that you want to do or be interested in. And so again, there's no reason this can't be fun.
Yeah. Well, and that's a good reminder to all of us to make sure that you're having fun and you're not just grinding away. Yeah, so what is the point of this journey if you're not having some fun? So with that, exactly. Kyle Roof, thank you so much for giving us some really great information, sharing your story of entrepreneurship and your journey, showing what it looks like to live in different countries and how you can maneuver or not, depending on which country it is, and if you are going to give them a bribe or which ones have better communities for other digital change agents. And with that, thank you to my audience for listening to another episode of Your Brand Amplified. I'll be back with another amazing expert speaker in a few days, so stay tuned for that episode. Want more? Check out amplifywithannika.com or follow me on socials at amplifywithannika.